So I made a poll on the channel if I should even go and watch this movie. It was pretty much split in the middle, and obviously I went. Was it a good decision? Let's find out. Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage. I've reviewed almost 500 indie movies on the channel and I was really hesitant to go and watch Animal. Part of it is because it's an hour to the cinema, an hour back home, and a movie that's almost 3.5 hours long. And then the other part is that I only liked Arjun really fine and was afraid Animal would be a movie which only exists to provoke and be as violent and toxic as possible. And please don't take this the wrong way, but there are a lot of movies from all around the world that already pushed all kinds of boundaries, and not just in the last few years, but ever since movies were around. And the Indian movie industry, or movie industries, with its pretty rigorous censor board, isn't really up for the task, at least when it comes to violence and sexual content. Sure, if you only watch Indian movies, it's different, but if you have treated yourself to movies from world cinema, this really isn't all that crass. And the discourse around it and this emphasis on how extreme it is a little bit annoying and almost made me skip it altogether. And I have to be honest with you, that shot with the giant Gatling gun from the trailer didn't look badass or cool or anything to me, but just ridiculous. But now, with all this being said, in the movie, that gun moment worked much better and also looked much better. And yeah, sure, it's still ridiculous, but more in a hilarious and fun way. And that whole interval sequence was pretty great. And it's not even that it's just the violence, but it's how it is presented. First of all, Ranbir Kapoor is a machine, and it's impossible not to stare at him, for several reasons, and I will come to that. But also because it's an action scene that's obviously heavily inspired by other movies like Old Boy, John Wick or Scarface, but it's made with an Indian touch. Like it said about the gun, and engraved on the gun, it's made in India. And when Ranbir's character Vijay is hacking and slashing through countless enemies and his entourage is starting to create their own background score for him by singing, it was just awesome. Now, the movie as a whole, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit, and I was really surprised by that. Not that I wanted to hate it, why would you want to do that, but I kind of expected it to be not my cup of tea at all. After Arjun Reddy, the annoying hype as well as controversy around it, and filmmaker Sandeep Reddy Vanga, I didn't expect him to deliver such a different and also kind of fresh film. Again, Animal feels very influenced by a lot of other movies, but it feels like Sandeep Reddy Vanga's own personal vision of that, and what he brings to it mostly worked for me in a weird way. I'm not sure if it mostly worked, but there's just something about Animal that put a smile on my face for most of its really exaggerated runtime. It is his riff on The Godfather, with some very clear similarities in the plot. There's even a direct quote early on where Vijay says that history has showed them that it's possible to kill anyone you want. I think what I liked or enjoyed most about the movie, and what also surprised me the most I guess, is that there's a clear comedic touch to it all. And maybe it was just how I read it, but to me it definitely felt like there was a lot of irony or satire in there as well. And when people are complaining or criticizing how toxic or backwards the movie is, I didn't really get that feeling. It's so obvious that Vijay isn't a good guy. He can be a badass, but he's also so ridiculous and kind of an idiot. And all that machismo, all that gangster stuff, all the revenge and violence and misogyny, I always perceived it through a lens of irony and pulp. This whole movie felt like a wild, sentimental, exuberant and excessive, pulpy graphic novel, and I honestly was kind of transfixed by it. Does the story and the character stuff work? Unfortunately, not all that much, but somehow the style or vibe saved it, along with the performances, music and some really nice moments. What should have been the main focus, this difficult father-son relationship, Anil Kapoor as a distant father who was always occupied with his work, and the son, Ranbir Kapoor, who from the get-go shows some truly troubled sociopathic tendencies, their relationship doesn't really track throughout the movie. There's no deep psychology or anything like that to it. Normally, I'm easy to move when it comes to father-son stuff, but I didn't feel much here. But then again, I still enjoyed it on a comedic level. The word papa is said so many times throughout that I couldn't help but find it amusing. Some people might call it cringe, but I can't help but feel that it's also somewhat intentional. This obsessive behavior of VJ and the extreme and also ridiculous nature of it all, the way it is executed, I cannot see this as not funny to some degree. I felt the movie wants to show how ridiculous and also obnoxious VJ is. And Ranbir plays him like that, and for me, he and the movie itself somehow managed to hit that fine line where he can be a badass and you can enjoy the power fantasy of it all, and at the same time show how ridiculous it all is. But maybe that's just me again. And again, like that big Gatling gun, something I found rather dumb in the trailer, two big muscular guys beating the shit out of each other on some airfield. In the movie itself, there was just something wonderfully pulpy about it. Because in the movie, it's not a fight scene that wants to be tense or super cool, I think, but instead they put this beautiful longing song to it, which juxtaposes it and transforms it into something different. And surprisingly, this goes for most of the movie. I don't know how much it is intended, but Animal really doesn't seem like a movie that wants to be tense or suspenseful. It has a really strange flow and pace, and the way it jumps back and forth in time in the first half, and you often only really got to know the motivation and reasoning for something after it already happened. It's all a bit bizarre, and the structure shouldn't work. And honestly, I'm not sure if it really works, but somehow I was still entertained and drawn to it. Ranbir is pretty great, and the humor and the heightened quality just worked for me. Like that whole segment where he's recruiting his entourage, where he's reactivating old family ties. From a storytelling perspective, everything is just super thin. We barely learn anything about these characters, and it's not realistic. But I don't think it's a movie that wants to be all that realistic. It feels superficial, and yet there's just something about it. Some rawness, some animalistic touch as well, obviously. And while the father-son relationship didn't do that much for me, I thought the actual emotional core is much more the one between Vijay and his wife Gitanjali, played by Rashmika Mandanna. First, I was afraid it might be just another one of those super one-sided dynamics where the woman just completely shifts to the background after a while. And sure, this is Ranbir's movie and Rashmika Mandanna's screen time could have been extended. And yet I felt, first of all, she was certainly up to act opposite of Ranbir's huge presence, and second, the character itself was very different from what I expected or rather feared. Yeah, Vijay is a so-called alpha, or at least he sees himself as such, and he says a lot of stupid stuff throughout the film. But then again, I felt the movie is well aware of that and has fun with it and pokes fun at it. I mean, a movie that has such a silly underwear scene knows what it's doing. And also his wife Gitanjali doesn't just accept all of his stuff, but instead calls him out on his bullshit. I thought their relationship and their banter and also their attractiveness towards each other is what injects this movie with a lot of its energy. Sure, some of it also felt rather juvenile and just there to provoke, but some of it certainly had an effect on me as well, especially in the boundaries of an Indian commercial movie. There's this moment early on where Vijay and Gitanjali tell her family that they have decided to get married against her family's wishes. And to make it really clear, they just start kissing in front of all of them. In a movie industry in which the romantic leads almost never really share intimacy on screen, this was just such a powerful little moment. And you can find it crude or silly, but for me it worked and I just had fun with it. And also with all the airplane stuff that shortly followed. It's over the top and ridiculous, but there's also something raw and again animalistic to it. The chemistry between Ranbir and Rashmika was great, and when she is calling him out later in the movie, I almost wanted to cheer. People might find the movie toxic, but I don't really see it, because throughout the movie, Vijay is again and again portrayed as a pretty pathetic guy as well. And I loved that Ranbir went all in on the role. Just the physical performance alone, but also the willingness to show all these heightened, pathetic daddy issues. I also really enjoyed the music and how the songs were integrated into the narrative. So yeah, as you can see, I had a pretty good time with the movie. I probably wouldn't want to watch it again anytime soon because of the really long runtime and because the story isn't really all that interesting and because it doesn't seem that there are many deeper themes and elements that amount to much. A lot of the stuff going on in the family, which is again very Godfather-like, is just very underwritten. The stuff with Varun and Vijay's sisters, it's all everywhere and nowhere. Or how late the movie goes into the actual antagonists. Visually, stylistically, how the images and the music come together, all the swagger, all the comedy, all of that worked for me. But from a structural or storytelling perspective, a lot is to be missed, I think. Yet in the end, I was actually quite happy that I did drive all the way to the cinema and give it a chance. So, in German I'd say, Animal ist ein ziemlich bekloppter, aber irgendwie auch total eigener und frischer der PATE Remix. Mit einem wahnwitzigen Ranbir Kapoor, einer super starken Rashmika Mandanna, toller Musik und vor allem der richtigen Note Humor und Ironie. I give Animal 6 out of 10. It's more like 6.4, but I don't do that. Alright, that's it like always. Comment below and let me know what you think about Animal. You can hit me up on, let's just say, just Patreon, simply at the Jimmy Cage. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all I have to tell.